We're going to start this program, and what we're doing is, this is the Xavier Foundation. We were founded last year with the hopes of and concern for the integrity of St. Francis Xavier campus, National Historic Register buildings, and we're interested in putting those buildings to use for the community. I'm Tom Moylan. We have a number of distinguished panelists that if I fail to introduce them, they'll introduce themselves as we go around. We have, I might mention as we get started, if y'all have pens, everybody have a pen, because we have 2 times that this video will show, and that's from 3 to 4 p.m. on Monday, March 22nd on Channel 7, MCAT Channel 7, and then from 7 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, March 24th. I might mention that this is one of 4 videos on this subject. All are available at MCAT for viewing with a phone call ahead. We are working to have them available on a checkout basis also, and that will be announcing later. The 2 times are from 4 to 5 p.m. Monday, March 22nd, and the other time that this will show is 7 to 8 p.m. Wednesday, March 24th. So we've been working at this for several months and trying to explore the issues, trying to get finding more and more interest in the community in what we're doing. We have a very distinguished person has stepped forward who has actually wrestled with the issues for some years and has gone through the UM School of Social Work in the person of Terry Foster. Terry, just a greeting. Is your mic turned on, Terry? There will be a little green light. There'll be a little green light there. If the,
okay, there's a green light on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and I think we hear you. I think we hear you. So, great. Cindy has, I might say Cindy has done a book on this very topic.
Terry,
I mean, Terry has done a book on this very topic, research, designed, and written by Teresa Foster. And so Teresa's been working in this area and understands the issues and sees the need for not only after-school care for children, but on into the evening. And so, this is quite a piece of work, quite a project here, and it's been a dream of hers. So I won't go any further. I'll let her address that. In this issue, then, it's a whole mix of ownership issues, the building is in the deed is in the hands of the Diocese of Helena, but we who are Catholics in the community realize that actually the diocese is us, and that the diocese will be responsive to people who care about issues of parish property, of diocesan property, but more so about the possible uses for this building, which are quite on a quite broad basis. Sarah, we have Sarah Hughes with us, who is a student at the University of Montana and has for a long time understood the possibilities for use of facilities like this. For instance, there's wood floors all throughout, and at one time Sarah toured with Up With People. Can you address the meaning of wood floors to, say, dancers? What it can mean, just out of interest?
It's a very nice commodity to be able to have. I mean, it does create a nicer facility to be able to dance on, and it's safer. It's a safer environment for dancers to be in, and it's something that doesn't exist everywhere. So it's really nice when you find a facility that has floors like this to be able to dance in.
Yeah, yeah. And yes, and so we have wooden floors throughout, meaning that any of our classrooms there, they could either be a classroom or they could be a mini dance studio at any given time.
Well, I mean, and that's the other thing is that there are dance classes going on at the university that are independently run, where people are renting the rooms from the university, that will not be able to rent those rooms in a couple of weeks and need. Is it on? I think it is. I think it's great. And we'll need a facility in which to continue with their dance classes because the community still wants to participate in these dance classes, and they will need facilities. So there are not many, but several dance classes that could move in there as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's an
So-
example. There have been, I
Yeah.
think, we're probably getting into the hundreds of requests for use of that building. I'm aware of it, quite a number of requests as wedding reception space.
Right.
It's been used for all of these things in the past. It's been used for the Greek Orthodox dinners. It's been the Northern Plains Resource Council when they needed a meeting chamber. I've seen that auditorium full for the Bash celebrations. So, you know, the building, the question has come up, is it a solid building? 3 teams of structural engineers and architects have declared it a solid building. It's in need of some patches on the roof, a couple things like that, but no, it is a fully solid building with the architects and engineers ready to attest to that. In fact, major reports have been done on that very issue by these teams of architects and engineers. I've been in personal conversations with some of the structural engineers. They have no doubt that the building is usable and viable. The city of Missoula, as we understand it, has no intention or wish to lose that building in any way. It's part of historic Missoula, historic downtown Missoula. People don't come to Missoula to see parking lots. They come to see Missoula. James, we have with us James Weir, who has some considerable international experience in buildings and in their uses. And James, if you could give us some insight into, you know, the possibilities for reuse of buildings.
Well, I think if anybody's watched the program before, I think I've explained quite a lot about the adaptive reuse of buildings. It's extensive in Europe. It's a real moneymaker, if you want to put it that way in prosaic terms, because as you say, people come to see history. I mean, why do people go to Britain? I mean, they don't go to see high-rise blocks and space-age structures. They go to see castles. They go to see buildings. They go to see Renaissance buildings. They go to see Regency buildings. They go to see Georgian buildings. Architects come and photograph and copy what's been done before. And people are looking for this kind of connection. And if they come to Missoula, why would they want to stop in Missoula if all they see is new buildings rising all over the place? Maybe in Las Vegas, because that has the reputation of being a new place. But even there, people like to go and see the familiar things. I mean, if suddenly one of the casinos is gone that they like to go to, why would they go there?
Yeah.
And when people come, they like to see an aesthetically pleasing area to look at.
Well,
So-
as you point out, these, you know, actually, interestingly, this building, the whole building, the whole campus is historic, and the Montana Preservation Commission has so designated as a National Historic District, all 4 buildings. The building in question, in the greatest question right now, is the St. Francis Xavier School building at Spruce and Orange. It's a large building, 30,000 square feet. It's got a gym and auditorium, but that building it's actually, interestingly, the newest building on that campus. There's no question of tearing down the church, which is 1892. There's no question of tearing down the rectory, which is something like 1910 or so. The Loyola building is 1917 or so, and this building is 1927. Essentially the same age, by the way, as Hellgate High School, which was recently rehabilitated. It was fully evaluated and found fully worthy of rehabilitating, and as this building has been. It's our understanding that the building can be used now, although some refurbishment is would certainly be a good part of the picture. And how do you go about that? Well, you do it by getting it in use. And we've got James Laskin. Dr. Laskin he's with, he has a venture called New Directions, which is specifically to help people with physical disabilities. My wife is, I think, going to be a patient because of her osteoporosis and 2 fractures in 1 year. James, can you tell us how you could help somebody out like Mary Frances, my wife?
Sure. I think it's, people in our community with both physical disabilities that are visible and chronic illness that may or may not be visible. We hear in the media and the news this crisis of obesity and decreasing health, both from our young people as well through middle age and older. It's a real problem, and having facilities for people to exercise in a safe, healthy environment is very, very important, and not just having a few necessarily private or fitness centers that cater to a certain group of people. That's important, but having places that are comfortable for a whole variety of individuals who want some place that's a little more social, and again has good supervision, and that's what we're trying to
What do you
provide.
see, James, for the possibilities? This building is I might as well, maybe I should bring it up to the mic here. But excuse me, viewers, but perhaps this will show what we're dealing with. This is the building, and it's located across the street from the hospital.
I think what's unique is that many of the people I work with, when I have done these types of programs actually in a hospital, it's actually not where they want to go. They've been in hospital enough. They actually want a non-medical model. Having a hospital close is nice for referral or for in case of emergencies, I guess, although in the 5 years, knock wood, that I've been doing this program, we haven't had an emergency yet, but I guess it will come. But the beauty of a building like this is the space. It's accessible. Where it's located in Missoula is where many of the individuals who have mobility impairments and limited resources to get somewhere, both again young and old, having, for instance, when you're saying what you could do, having a gym facility where you could have your exercise equipment in the center and have walking space around the outside that's safe. Wooden floor is the optimal place to walk on, and we could provide amazing services to both, again, for people with a whole variety of limitations and functions, both young and old, could do recreational activities in there as well. I think that this building offers many, many possibilities for providing space for this type of venture, whether it's the New Directions program as we do, which is very holistic in nature, or more of a drop-in fitness center that would cater to a whole variety of other needs.
I might mention that we now have this building, an image of this building. Thanks to the modern computer marvels, we have an image of this building with the doors open, and that's important.
Are they animated, Tom? Do they go back and forward?
Do they move?
Yeah.
That would be up to Pixar. We're not ready for that.
We don't have any connections with them.
This image here is the campus itself, and it shows St. Francis Elementary building here along with the other buildings. And this really, what we're going through right now is a new period of questioning about the existence of the buildings and all, but we've been through other attempts to scrape this campus clean. This is not new. And so we're familiar with this. There has been various plans and hopes or dreams of some individuals that nothing be left on this campus but the church and all other buildings be gone. And so I just mentioned that, but those things I think are in the past. I think our church and our parish and our diocese hopefully are starting to look at more the idea of uses rather than parking lots. As long as I'm on the subject, this Grizzly poster, and I'm not sure how that'll come across to you viewers, but when you see Grizzly posters around town, take a real close look, because that's the St. Francis Xavier Gym. It's a great gym. Our hall at the parish is named after Father Fred Reedy. Father Fred Reedy basically, when this gym was built, Father Fred Reedy was on the basketball team. While history is important, this is still a great facility, and there's lots of kids in that neighborhood, and they're needy. There's a lot of needy people. This is a chance for people to participate. We have a builder with us, Tim Bernard. Tim, you've worked on this a little bit and have some feeling for what's happening. Do you see any potential uses for this building as versus the soundness of the structure? Can you address that?
Well, we were on a path to turn it into a community center not too long ago, but unfortunately we got a new administration, and there's been some behind-the-scenes politicking going on. So now there's a new game plan, which is to replace the building. There's already a blueprint that exists. We saw it about 8 months ago. So we're just trying to bring these people back to reality, because it's a simple numbers game. One thing that I did do in town here, for any of you that are familiar with the skating rink out at the fairgrounds, a lot of people said we couldn't get that built. It was going to cost a lot more than what we did. But there's a lot of ways to make things happen if you know what you're doing, and if you can lay out a concrete plan and take a look at the numbers, and they're hard and fast. It's not a bunch of magic. If you don't have a lot of fluff, and this building is already ready to go. Like Thomas said, there's 30,000 square feet. There's 14,000 square feet of classrooms in there. One potential layout, when we were trying to show people how to develop property, because quite frankly, a lot of the people who are making this decision don't have a lot of experience in developing real estate and don't know much about it. And what our proposal was to rent out the upper floor. It's about 7,000 square feet to the Missoula Housing Authority, and they would put in the elevator and deal with it. We have some mission there because they deal with the lower income people in housing. That would provide us with a cash flow of between 40 to 50,000 at triple net, so that is what we'd actually physically take in. And then we'd have another 7,000 square feet to either rent out, or the thing that I'm proposing is that at least part of this be put into a free to subsidized daycare for the children, especially young kids. There's a lot of, in the 2000 census, this north side here is about 40% in poverty. There's a lot of single parents and a lot of people that are trying to get off of the dole, that one of their biggest worries and costs is health care. And here they'd have a great place to come in. We'd have a great place for mission, because instead of showing standard cartoons and stuff, we do a soft sell, have Christian cartoons, provide a Christian atmosphere of helping and trying to do. The mission of Christ is, what you do to the least of these, you do to me. And so this would begin to bring people in. They wouldn't have to be a Christian or Catholic to come, but if nothing else, they'd come in and they could see how Christians live and work, and we could do something for our community, get a positive outlook for the church, do something positive. One of the things that we've been hearing lately is, oh, there's so many organizations in town, everything is taken care of in this town. Well, there is not a Christian daycare in this town. There is not a free or subsidized daycare, let alone a Christian daycare in this town. Another thing we're looking at in working together with the Knights of Columbus is I'd like to start a library, which could be used with internet access for kids to come in and mentoring after school and into the evening, because not everyone in the daycare would be young kids. And then with the auditorium, get a place for teens to go on Fridays and Saturday nights, and maybe other nights during the week. Because one thing, these kids are going to go out and they're going to do things. We need to provide places where these kids can go and do things. There's tons of, actually one of the fastest growing genres in music is the Christian music. And we could have a DJ there. It's really easy and low cost. There's just a lot of things we can do. We need to stop talking about helping the poor. We need to stop talking about all this stuff we do for kids. We need to actually do something. I mean, I hear it all the time. No one ever says they're against kids, but in my over 3 decades of dealing with stuff, I've met very few people that actually do anything for children other than talk about it.
Thank you, Tim, and I see Terry Foster nodding her assent. It's Terry that wrote the book. Terry brings a great deal of experience and hope to our efforts. We also have Jordan with us tonight. This is a youth speak. I hope that Jordan and also Sarah, they're university-age people that will actually, be participating and asking questions as they come to you. Do feel free to ask questions. But I'll bounce it back to Terry, because Terry, you were nodding in assent when Tim spoke to the idea of children's needs. Can you help us out a little bit on that from your experience?
Well, from my experience, as far back as when I was
Just move the mic closer.
sorry, this is my
Yeah.
first time. My experience, it goes back to when I was a single parent and trying to work and do what's right by my son and provide for him, finding affordable daycare. I had to take jobs that were mindless, and I worked in fields. I raked walnuts, picked pears, did whatever I could, because during those times I could take him with me. And I don't see much difference today. A single parent working a minimum wage job, trying to pay the average housing rent is $500, and that was like a couple of years ago, so I'm sure it's gone up. And then pay for child care, and then try to, to feed them, to provide health care, to provide new clothes, the things that families need to thrive. And I think having the community come together and bringing the children to where that they can have an even start as everybody else. And our children deserve that. They're our most valued possession. And if we don't look out for them today, then I think we're headed for a lot of trouble.
Well, it's Terry that wrote that book I showed on the screen, and it's Terry that has experience with this, and it's the possibilities here for, say, an unused school building. For instance, one of the suggestions that's been made is the idea of, say, this Montana Institute for Child Development. Basically a format of after-school programs, preschool programs to serve those type of needs and that would be through partnering with the university and with the hospitals. The original institutes were developed by St. Patrick's Hospital at that time under the leadership of Mr. Larry White, administrator, and they developed the Montana Heart Institute, the Montana Neuroscience Institute, and also the Institute for Medicine and Humanities. And we see or have hopes for a venture here, a joint venture that would utilize, as it were, diocesan buildings for the purposes of serving people with real needs. I'd like to ask you, Terry, what about, say, a waitress that maybe she's a single mom. Maybe dad is working out at the mill till he works around the clock or the late hours at the mill, and mom has a waitress job. What happens to the kids at home?
Well, sometimes, unfortunately, they're left home alone because the price of daycare is just, it's so far out there that it's just not reachable by most people. It's hard enough for a two-family household, working household, to make ends meet. But then you put in child care and you put in everything else that goes with that. I have parents that I know that one works days, the other one works nights so that they can have somebody there, but they don't ever have to see each other. And then they don't get to do things as a family, or they can't go to their children's after-school football or dance recital or anything else like that. And when kids don't have that support, then they quit. And you can't blame them. And I think that something that would bring the community together and we all help each other. Volunteer, go to an after-school football game and root a child on, because if they don't have something that keeps them in school, they're not going to stay.
Well, that's very true, and that's very, and it's going to come to everybody's mind at this point. Well, how do you staff this? And for that matter, how do you fund it? And we'll be glad to go on to that topic. But just staffing it is a very interesting topic, and that's why we have people here that understand something about staffing and understand the resources. For instance, we have a 14,000 student university here, and that university has a goodly number of practicums, student practicums. And so if it were possible for the Xavier Foundation to, for instance, act as a bridge organization between parish, diocese, hospitals, and bridge those gaps so that in turn, those student practicums, which are needed by the university to fulfill course requirements, can then be applied to these needs at the Xavier Foundation.
And there's also other ways too. At the university, I know for 3 of my classes, I took a volunteering class, and I went out into the community and I volunteered. There's also a lot of our elders that would love to be involved with children and have some place where that they could go and maybe tutor a child that is struggling in math or reading, or take that child to the football game. There's so many resources in our communities that it eventually would pay for itself.
And that, as you say, and what you're saying is actually echoed by paying for itself. I had a conversation with the present chairman of our Chamber of Commerce, Bob Tutsky, and he said, do you realize he said, there are people, so many people in need of this, that he said, you realize if you can get it going, that there will be so many people that want to be there and be part of it, that there won't be room ultimately, as we develop it.
And one of the other ways is bringing the families together and having families more involved with the care of their children. If they can't afford daycare, then have them trade hours someplace in the center. Maybe it not be within the child care department, but maybe it be in a dance or helping to put together a play with the kids, or, there's so many other things that could be, that we could work together as a family, as a community.
Yes, very much so. And you just mentioned the idea of donating, and so we envision a pledge campaign where people pledge hours. Maybe they pledge $1, maybe they pledge $5, but by participating in those ways and by pledging, they show their will and desire to participate. And but certainly just the donation of hours, whether it be that way or to paint, or some have said really all the building needs is a little bit of paint and it's ready to go. There's some leaks in the roof, but they're not. Lots of people have a little bit of water to deal with. Tim, to speak to that.
Could I just say one thing?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, James.
While we're on this,
Yeah, go ahead.
volunteering and getting involved, could you mention all the different ways that people can, if they want to get in touch with the foundation, either by phone, the website, and email, and those kinds of areas, so that people can, if they want to do this, they can contact us with ideas, offers, whatever they'd like to do.
Yes, and I do appreciate that heads up, and I'd appreciate that being brought up again as we proceed, because it should be, for those of you who've just tuned in, we are the Xavier Foundation. Our website, www.xavierfoundation.net. Our phone number, 531-2394. And we have a post office box, which is, and we would appreciate letters of support or caring. P.O. Box 7631, Missoula 59807. And that's a very good point that we should continue to bring up. Jordan, I hope you have some questions ready. We'll be calling on you. If this is the time, fire away. If not, I'll go on to Sarah. Do you have some ideas about what's proceeding here?
I, as a youth of Missoula, sorry.
Make sure your little green lights
There's a button here. It's right. Now,
Yeah, there you go.
I, as a youth of Missoula, find that Missoula is a very unique place. I grew up in Stevensville. There are a lot of not a lot of national, but a lot of local monuments there. And right outside of Stevensville, there's I think it's the Revalia Missionary or something.
The St. Mary Mission.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excuse me. But if it's one thing that I've noticed about Missoula, especially around this area, is that we treasure our history. We treasure the things that our forefathers built in this land. And I find it appalling that, we're now having to look at the concept of somebody's going to tear down a building that has been around for almost an entire century, that has withstood the very test of time. That's a feat in of itself. And these people, when they built this building because not because they wanted to be recognized for it, but because it was their devotion to their faith. And they built it because it filled them with some sort of, not pride, but it made them proud for what they accomplished.
Yeah.
And they hoped that, with that, God may look in on them a little bit more often from time to time.
That's very well said, and that is, as you say, the people that swarmed over that, the hod carriers and bricklayers that swarmed over that building in 1927, they didn't delay. They went ahead and built because they didn't know it then at the time, and it was an act of faith. And they produced something that could be there for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's a wonderful building. And I'll be asking you, James, later about that aspect of buildings in Europe or in this country that, you go down to the French Quarter in New Orleans. I used to go to see out of the French Quarter. My union hall was down there and in the French Quarter, and I just got to revisit it 50 years later. The French Quarter, parts of it go back hundreds of years, and yet it's the same French Quarter now. It's no change. They've been able to maintain it by taking care of it. And down there, they got termites. We don't even have termites to deal with. Karen Riedel is with us, and Karen recently did an in-depth report, which I was privileged to hear, about Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And Notre Dame, I don't know how many times it was endangered over the history of Paris, Karen, but when was it built?
In the 11th century.
In the 11th century.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
And it's still standing, and it's still in use today.
yeah,
And it's what people come to Paris to see.
it's the symbol of Paris.
It's the symbol of Paris, yes. it
Well,
is.
and as an example, we have an example here in this town that every image you see of our university is Old Main building, the Old Main Hall at our university.
Mhm.
And a lot of people have said it, but we have, in this town, we have lost a building identical to Old Main Hall. And it's not a pleasant thought that we lost it, but we did. And that's the Sacred Heart Convent. It was built from the same set of plans as A.J. Gibson built the Old Main Hall, minus it just lacked the dome. So many people have said, never again. And I think that's one thing, those of us that saw that happen, and I was one of them, and it's unfortunate when those things happen, because I understand, frankly, that if you took a vote on the streets of Missoula today, they'd vote the Sacred Heart Convent back in existence. But those are issues, that's gone. James, I see you nodding, and you have some knowledge of, say, buildings in Europe, even as far as Moscow. Could you?
What I wanted to say was that just preserving old buildings for the sake of preserving old buildings is just self-defeating. One of the great things about, as you were saying, about Notre Dame Cathedral is that it's an old building built in the 11th century. It's still there. It's survived. But it's a working building. It is not a place that tourists just go to see. It is a place of worship. Now, people come to Missoula. They see this campus, and it's preserved, and it's all painted, and it's pointed, and it's all nice inside. But there's nothing going on inside it. What we want to do is preserve it and reuse it. It's a working building. It gives it an atmosphere. You know, when you go into an empty building, it's never been used, it's empty, it's dead. But when you go into somewhere that's an old building, it has all its history, plus it's got an atmosphere for people being inside it. Because it's being used, it's being useful. And that's history, you know, because history is preserving what you've got and using what you've got. It's like your own life. You look back in your history to see where you've been, what mistakes you've made, and what not to do, because I've done that, been there, done that, and I'm not going to do it again. So what you can do with your history and your buildings is to make them integral part of the community and use them and preserve the history, preserve the thread to give people an anchor, security, something to rely on. Because if with the terrorist acts going on, all you see on TV when you look at it is buildings being demolished, people being blown up. They just blew up a big hotel in Baghdad. Well, that'll never be there again. So what you do is you rebuild it and you preserve it. And it's a landmark. It's part of the history. This was blown up. It's now rebuilt. We rebuilt it the same way as it was because we don't want the people who want to destroy our way of life to win. And if you do this and use history and buildings, the actual physical presence of history, then that's what you do. You reuse it and adaptive reuse it. And it's part of your history. It's part of your fabric. It's part of you.
Well, you just struck on something, and that we at the Xavier Foundation, you know, and I think those of us that are that care about this feel very strongly, and that is, buildings that are in use, tend to survive. If they're allowed to sit empty, not only don't they survive, but there's a tendency for, say, that campus to be taken over by another entity. I mean, in other words, use it or lose it. Right now, that campus is pretty much empty all day long. How can we get it back in use? I personally, and I think some of you here at the table, remember when that campus was alive with kids. Sure, the Catholic schools moved across the river, but there's lots of kids, there's lots of needs, and there's the possibility of getting all that back and getting it into use. And it doesn't have to be just kids. I mean, there's needs for the elderly. There's needs for the physical therapy patients. We've been approached by a group that does ancillary care for cancer patients. In other words, we're across the street from the cancer center, and they want to do they do emotional support for cancer patients. Those things are all, you know, doable right there. Terry, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I just was wanting to add one more thing. We had one man with a dream of a carousel horse for his wife, and he ended up building a carousel for Missoula, and a community came together and helped build that. And now it's other people, other states, other counties are going by what Missoula did.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can take something and you can make it something that Missoula can be proud of, but at the same time, and bring a community together to build it. And it would make, like he said, not just an empty building. It would be something that
Yeah.
Missoula communities could be proud of.
Well, that's so true, you know, and it's, well, I think, you know, we know that, for instance, in Boston, 1 out of 4 parishes is being closed. We know that in New York City, many, many parishes are being closed in the Catholic Church. But that doesn't mean that's going to happen here in western Montana. We're a different breed of cat, and we don't give up and we don't stop. And we know that there are empty buildings, that the diocese has an empty building over in Helena, the St. Helena Grade School. We know that the Immaculate Conception School is empty over in Butte. But those are not issues that concern us. We're in Missoula, and we're in a growth center here. We're in a rapid growth center that desperately needs this kind of space. Yes, you can rent a wedding reception hall for $3,000, but can you rent one for $300? What about the people that want that? I brought a poster in to post it at a Greek restaurant the other day, and they were both young people operating, and I told them, you know, if we can keep this building going, it would be an opportunity to rent wedding reception space for $300 instead of $3,000. They said, oh, by all means, then put it right up front here where everybody can see it at, because it immediately got their imagination, you know. They happen to be in that age group. They're looking at how do you finance a wedding. James?
Well, I think, too, that what I was thinking is that this is not just a nice lady case. We're not just people doing this for the first time. There is, on TV, if you've been watching TV, there's a national movement called Restore America. What are they trying to do? Keep buildings that are historic, of importance to America. They're trying to keep them alive, and they're trying to use them in adaptive ways to keep them going. And this is not just us. We are part of this revival, if you like. And so we're not just doing this on our own. And the campus is actually being accepted for registration in the National Historic Register. And it went through like that. There was no hesitation. There was no big investigation. There was no justification. They saw
It was unanimous.
And it was unanimous, yeah. And we were just right in there. So it's an important.
Well, yeah, and there's examples. There's examples right in the Catholic Church. You know, for instance, Francis of Assisi Parish in Spokane, a wonderful parish, had an empty school building. They worked their way through it, and they found a business use for the bottom floor, and then the upper floor became child care. And that child care facility employs 30 people, and it brings in $300,000 a year. Now, another example, there are 4 daycares around Billings that benefit the Catholic schools over there. 2 of them are on the Rocky Mountain campus and on the Montana State Eastern, used to be called whatever, but it's now Montana State Eastern. It was called Eastern Montana College or Billings, whatever, Eastern Montana Billings, or MSU Billings, that's what it is. And I'm sorry, but those 4 daycares are operated by the Catholic schools over there and bring in $70,000 into the Catholic schools right there. I mean, these issues can help in the broad range. They can help the facilities that need. We had a person recently sit down with us that sits on multiple boards in town, and she said that she could vouch that half of the boards that she sits on would like space in our building. You know, the workers are there, but the space to occupy. So the Catholic Church could actually here do well by doing good.
Well, it's the biggest cost of running a program. You have your labor, but you also have your biggest part of your overhead is the structure, whether that's rent or building a new building. And the cost of demolition, we have a bid about $160,000, and then you'd probably spend anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 to fill in the hole and do the landscaping and turn it into a parking lot. And we have a bid from a very high-priced builder in town, and we'd get a brand-new roof, replace the windows and doors that need to be replaced, and also put in a sprinkler system throughout the building. And to just give you an idea, those are a matter of making about 3 phone calls, because you just call the roofer, you call the fire suppression person. So we could save and knock that down so that the price of demolition would equal the cost of the initial rehab. And then all we're talking about is a lot of painting and stuff, where there's a lot of people that are interested in helping us. The part that they don't want to do is the political part, which is what we're wading through right now. But the bottom line is there was a blueprint done, and the simple math is, by the time you build this new structure, which is roughly about 1/4 the size of the current building that exists, you're going to spend about $1 million. The building will be worth less because you've got this added cost of the demolition and the parking lot, where if you put that money into the existing building, you're going to have a building that's worth 3 to 4 or maybe even 5 times what this other building is worth, because the modern building techniques they can't afford to build it as solid as it was built before. And one thing, if you want to go by and check the building out for yourself, the easy way to see what condition it's in is you just walk around it and you look for cracks in the brick, because that'll tell you what condition it's in, and there are no cracks in that building. And like Tom said, one of the architect groups that came and looked at it is the one that did a $100 million remodel up on the Capitol building up in Helena. So these guys aren't fly-by-night people who have come in and looked at the buildings and have checked them out, aside from myself and other builders.
Well, actually, that's very interesting because that, the architectural evaluations that have been done, and there's been a major, and they're not cheap, these architectural evaluations. They are available. I think that the parishioners should be asking to see those. And that architectural evaluation was done in hope and in actual, I think, in good faith that the School of Social Work at the University of Montana would operate Xavier House out of that facility. I can't tell you that this, how many times to say that this is a good building. I mean, St. Pat's was in there for several years. They wouldn't have had their entire administrative staff in a bad building. They moved out a year ago. It's been empty. It's time to move ahead. I think we all feel that. That's why we're here. It is a solid building. It's got a gymnasium. We have an interest from the athletic department at the university to run kid basketball and kid volleyball out of there, kid indoor soccer, all the things you can do. Interestingly, the auditorium at the other end of the building can also actually be converted into a couple gymnasiums, I mean on a temporary basis, by wheeling baskets or volleyball nets in there. So one could actually carry on 3 different league systems. The theater department is very interested in doing kid theater out of there. You know, how interested? You know, real interested, to the point of letters of request. Yes. So we do have multiple expressions, written expressions from all members of the community. How can we get that building back in use? Terry, I see you nodding as we go and interested in this.
Yeah, meeting you was probably the most hope I've had in a long time on my my feelings about a community family care center and how it would benefit Montana families. And I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to be a part of this, because I hope to see the dream come true, because I believe with all my heart and everything that's in me that it can't do nothing but help.
Well, Terry is, this is Terry when she was raising her youngster. I hope it shows through. A beautiful woman with a beautiful child. But this is a story all over Missoula. Next time you're out to dinner, talk to your waitress a little. Find out her story. You know, the people that are young people, and I've seen it with my own kids, they have to struggle. And yeah, struggle's good for you, but there's a point where it can break you down. And let's don't put people through that. Let's give them just a little leg up. Just not a handout, a hand up. A hand up.
Or as the saying goes, teach me to fish and I eat for a lifetime. Hand me a fish and I eat for a day.
And that's well said. That's well said, because it's. But this is Terry's own work on the basis, you know, a structural basis, and by structural I mean the underpinnings of how you run and the need for a program like this. We can turn many different places. We have many different child agencies in this town, and they'll all tell you, you know, that an agency like this. Well, what has been shown is that the more time kids can spend with adults, role models, if you will, the better that kid does in life. You know, I was saying, you know, and it's almost like a kind of a, you know, and it wouldn't apply to any of the kids in our town, but you know, a person could say it's our school or the Reform School, and a kind of a wiseacre professor over at the university, a wonderful professor, came back and did me one better. Yeah, it's Yale or jail. And so any of us that have raised kids, you know, it's scary. Raising kids is scary. And having kids alone at home. Jordan, I see you nodding. I mean, I remember my boyhood, and I had two parents watching me like a hawk. What do you say to that?
My parents are always concerned about my safety, but what I'm nodding my head to is the fact that I'm kind of going backwards here. You mentioned that there are a lot of elders that would love to work with kids. You know, my grandpa, who's passed away, he was a carpenter himself, and I never really got a chance to talk to him that much or spend that much time with him, because around the age of 3 he died. And my mom always told me about how he always tried to help people. He was a very spiritual man as well. Some people look to him as sort of their spiritual guide. And there was a time when he helped people after the great earthquake in Alaska, help rebuild parts of Alaska. And my mom, I was so late getting here. I asked my mom about my grandpa and whether or not he felt proud about his work, if he ever took pride in it. She said, absolutely. He always said that if you can't do something right the first time, then why do it at all? And, you know, I think that if there are elders who would be interested in helping kids learn these valuable techniques, such as carpentry, such as masonry, such as ironworking, you know, those are trade skills that are fading from our world very quickly as the industrial revolution continues to roll on.
Well, that's, what you're hitting on is, the possibility of, young people developing in that way by the input. Something that we have now is, say, computers.
Right.
Well, the St. Francis Xavier building is fully wired for computers, as an example. But certainly, the possibility of learning trades, it's one of the proposals has been actually a culinary school to be operated out of that kitchen, and that was a proposal by the North Side. Sarah?
Tom, I would just like to add something that we haven't mentioned yet this time, and I'm not sure if we mentioned it last time, but just to kind of appeal to any parishioners that are hearing this or listening to this, or anyone who's been through the Catholic schools, to get involved in this movement and start spreading the word to people they know and start discussing it with their priest and with their fathers and things like this, and writing the letters that need to be written so that this moves through the channels that it needs to move through. Because we have the community support, we have the people who want to be part of the building, but we are coming up against a roadblock and an administration change and things like this. And truly, I believe that what it needs now is backing from the people who are in the church, from the people who are going to the masses around this building and at this building, the children who've been through that school system, who used to attend school there. They have already invested several years of their lives in this. And that energy moving forward through this and that commitment that's already established,
Yeah.
I think is incredibly necessary at this point right now to push this further.
Well,
that's
very true. In fact, she's sitting back here hoping I won't say this, I think, but we actually have somebody here that actually went through that school.
Mm-hmm.
She's in the audience. I'm in hopes that she will, participate as we go forward here. And we have there's an interesting aspect to this, and it was just brought home to me today, and I'll share it with you, and that's this. It's just been brought to my attention that there's a time situation also that we're approaching, and I think we have another 5 minutes, if I understand correctly. Jason, could you check on that and just hold your fingers up check with the video man, the man shooting the video, and just hold your fingers up for where we're at. This is another good time to mention for you our website, www.xavierfoundation.net. And so, xavierfoundation.net, our phone number of 531-2394. For those of you that came in later in the show, This is what we're talking about. This building that the Grizzly team photo was taken in is the St. Francis Xavier Gym. And so we're in hopes of getting it back in use. For those of you that don't necessarily know the building, it sits on the St. Francis Xavier campus. If this is the church and facing from Broadway, you'll see the big St. Francis Xavier Grade School behind it. It's the largest building on the campus. In fact, one of the largest, it's the largest empty building in downtown Missoula. This is the building here. This is the artist's conception with people on the outside. And your thought, Sarah, was you were just...
The parishioners and just anyone who's attended these schools or already have time and money and their lives invested in them, to start rallying those people, because we do have community supporting and backing.
Yes, and that is, yes.
And we need them to be able to be speaking
Yeah.
to the fathers of their churches and writing letters to the
There you go.
diocese.
Yes, that's so true, because that's what I was just leading up to, is that the discovery that it isn't just our parish that's involved on this. It kind of comes home to you that there are 6 parishes in this town.
Right.
In a way, they all have to support this. They all have to get behind it, or it'll go nowhere. In other words, they have to look at it all as a positive development for the young people of our town, for the children of our town, for the people raising kids, and a positive development for their own parishioners. That would be the hope. James?
Well, what I was going to say is, we're running out of time, but maybe Jordan and Sarah could elaborate maybe just with 1 or 2 points of how they see the campus and the building being part of their lives in the future, because
Yes.
they are going to be the users of it.
Yes, would you two speak to that, please, as we close out our hour here?
I think the possibilities are endless, truly. I mean, we've talked about having elderly people in there that are doing activities, that are doing dances. We could easily have bands in there with kids after school, teaching them different types of cultural dances, having some of the presentations we have at the university there, having our international festival being held there for the kids after school as an extra thing. I really believe that we could be involved in several different areas with this. The point is that there's a community that needs this space and needs this building. And there are parishioners and people behind it and supporting it. And I think that that's the main point.
Yeah, Jordan.
While I was going to high school, I went to high school at Hellgate. I heard you mention that, and it's kind of interesting. I had an English teacher tell me about the history of how Hellgate was saved from the demolition, and how there was a building right across the street from behind it that was demolished. It was like a manor house, and it was demolished. And while my years at high school were going, I was spending time at the Boys and Girls Club. And in my time there, I think having some sort of community center for the community, for kids, for the community in general, is a great idea. I think it's a great use of the space that is available right now, that is sitting there drawing dust and, only being home to the spiders and such. But it's really a sad thing to see when people threaten to tear down such a monument, such a legacy to the past. And
Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Sarah. We really appreciate hearing, especially from young people. These buildings are about young people. We've got some very, Teresa Foster has stepped forward, Karen Riedel, James Weir, Sarah Hughes, Jason, James Laskin, Tim Bernard. I thank you all very much. We'll wrap it up and bring this discussion to an end.
Thank you, Tom.
But thank you so much.
Thank you.